Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 92 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans and Cornhusker fans.
Yes. And we are a father-son duo that does this podcast, college football podcast, by college football fans for college football fans. And, of course, talking about our own beloved Nebraska Cornhusker team.
Yes.
But before we dive into the specifics about the Huskers and their first week of practice that they've now been able to get into in the Big Ten, we thought we would talk about some of the big games that have been going on as the other conferences have been getting into their seasons. And last time we talked about weeks 2 and 3, and that was before the SEC start up their games. So we've got weeks 4, 5, and 6 to discuss. And something I remember thinking after we did that podcast, though I didn't articulate it at the time, was that more than likely all the stuff with COVID delaying practices, and teams not being as prepared as they usually would be, would probably affect the defenses in general more than the offenses, because, one misalignment on defense can lead to a dude being wide open and, a score. And although I haven't watched many of the games live on Saturdays, looking at the scores and a lot of the big upsets that have happened, that seems to be a common theme, is that there's a lot of kind of sloppy defense being played out there.
Absolutely true. Bottom line is so many teams that are missing the fact that they didn't have nearly as many contact days as they have historically had, right? And that's already been shrinking every year, the number of days you can actually be in full pads and banging heads. And as a result, the tackling has just been atrocious. And then even when guys are, quote, quote, where they're supposed to be on the field, they just don't execute. They don't make the play because they didn't have the repetitions on the physical side of it, right? Mm-hmm. They are where they're supposed to be on the field, but then they don't make the play.
Yep.
And it's really obvious.
Yep. So to start things off, there were 3 big upsets in week 4 of college football. And we'll go ahead and start off with the first happening within the SEC, with LSU ranked number 6, losing to Mississippi State 44-34. And one interesting thing of note for those Nebraska fans out there is that our old head coach Bo Pelini is the current defensive coordinator at LSU, and after their lackluster performance coming off of a national championship winning season so far, I don't think he has gone off to the best start over there in Louisiana.
No, that's right. There's already people calling for his head, and even his head coach is not completely, backing his guy up, so to speak, right? He just hired this guy and paid him big bucks to come and do this. And he's made it clear that the performance of the defense here early in the season has been an embarrassment, is the term he used. So Orgeron has already put Bo on notice that things have to get better, like now, or he's probably gone. Because there was not a vote of confidence there at all.
Yeah, because I guess we might as well mention it now. They beat their opponent in week 5, but then in week 6 they played against Missouri and also lost, this time 45-41.
Yes,
and both Missouri and Mississippi State have not done that well in their other games so far of the season. So to see their offenses being so prolific against a LSU defense that has a lot of talent, even if a lot of it is young, is not boding well for them.
That is correct. I mean, they're setting the wrong kinds of records right now at LSU.
Yeah. And of course, they lost their star, amazing quarterback and a lot of seniors, and people to the draft and all that stuff, coming off their great season last season. So I think everybody kind of knew they'd be taking a step back, but this much of a step back, I think, is a shocker to everybody.
Well, and especially on the defensive side. I mean, offensively, they put up 41 points. That should be enough to win you a football game if you're a good football team, right? I mean, that's the way mentally, that's the way people think about it. Is, if if you're going to score over 40 points, you should win. And
Yeah.
unless something's really wrong with your defense, well, that's the problem. Is that right now they don't know which end is up, and that's not necessarily unprecedented for Bo. As a defensive coordinator, there have been times in the past, obviously, when he was at Nebraska, even before, he had some games where we looked just atrocious, and then a year later we had the best defense in the country. But some of that had to do with personnel that we had too, right? That allowed his defensive scheme to become that successful. So it'll be interesting to see if he can turn this around, or is even given the time to turn it around. I sense that if he doesn't turn it around fairly soon, that he might get a pink slip pretty quick, and Orgeron will just pull the plug on this experiment before it gets too far along, because he has to play. They have to play Florida this week, I think, and then Alabama, I think, the next week. I mean, so like they've got they've got a couple of the tough games. I mean, they could easily go the next 3 weeks and not win.
Oof. yeah, that's definitely rough for them. And once again, to Bo's credit, like we just said, like, everybody is struggling in terms of like getting their players, to know the defensive game plan with the limited amount of time that they have and all that, so obviously some of that can be counted up to, that situation, but also that's true for every team. So,
correct.
It's kind of
correct.
a universal truth for everybody.
Correct. And so it's a year when, as a coach, you have to be flexible as a coach and recognize the unique circumstance you're in, and then change your normal and your standards to accommodate that. What I mean by that is that maybe you simplify your defense a little bit more, and you call less sophisticated schemes to prepare for a game plan, so that your guys get more repetitions on the parts of the game plan that you're going to put in play, right? And then you spend more time on fundamentals and less time teaching scheme, because that's what they need right now. Is they need as much time doing fundamentals as they can, like tackling.
Right. Yes, your favorite, your favorite
Exactly.
tackling.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, it really is amazing the number of times. Oklahoma is another. I'm sure we'll get into that, but they're another team that desperately needs to just go back to the basics and have a day where they just tackle.
Yeah. Speaking of Oklahoma, they also played in week 4 against Kansas State, ended up losing 35-38, which was obviously...
And gave up, I believe, at least a 21-point, if not a 28-point win or lead. They were winning. I think they were winning 28-7. Or something like that.
No, actually, I was just watching the replay. I think it was 14-35 late in the third quarter. So it was a 21-point lead.
Okay, 21-point lead.
And then Kansas State,
in the third quarter.
Right. And so Kansas State started to come back, and I guess Oklahoma didn't score a single point after that.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And I mean,
Pretty
again,
shocking.
their defense, well, very shocking, because, you had what most would consider, for a team like Oklahoma, a very comfortable lead against the team in Kansas State who had lost to a FCS level team in week 1. Right. In their first game, they lost to, I don't remember who it was, but it was like Texas State or something. I don't know. I mean, it was a team they shouldn't have lost to. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
And for them to then turn around and beat Oklahoma is just crazy.
Yeah. And then also our other friends from the old Big 12, number 8 Texas, played against Texas Tech, ended up losing 63-56 in an overtime game. So both of them...
wait a minute. Did Texas Tech... Texas? I thought Texas ended up beating Texas Tech.
I'm sorry. You're right. Texas did beat Texas Tech 63-56. It was just, I guess, it's just significant that it went to overtime, that it was that close.
And Texas Tech had like a 12 or maybe even an 18-point lead or something like that late in the contest. Should on all rights should have won that football game, and kind of just pissed down their leg and failed miserably. So Texas was lucky to get out of that alive. But then, and you may be getting into the next game where Texas did in fact lose,
Yes,
and
you're
that was against
TCU.
TCU, was it? Yeah,
Correct. TCU won 33-31 over Texas. So that was
right.
that game.
And so notice these are razor thin margins, right? These all these contests are within 7 points of each other. I mean, and that's one play, right? In most of those games, that's one play difference between winning and losing. So Texas could easily have gone 0-2 there or gone 2-0 there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing then for the last week's game, which was both Oklahoma and Texas playing each other in the Red River Shootout, which is the name that it will always go by on this podcast because that's the name of that contest. It has always been the Red River Shootout. Screw the politically correct who want to rename it or did rename it. And Oklahoma, again, total control of the game, was clearly the dominant team. And in fact, I think had nearly twice the offense that Texas did at a point in that contest in the third quarter, and then basically went to sleep at the wheel and let Texas and their quarterback just willed that team back into a tie, and they went into a crazy multiple overtime, slugfest.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was an incredibly entertaining game to watch because literally, I mean, you had to admire the players who were out there, especially at the end of the game, who were just. It was like a heavyweight fight where both fighters were in the 15th round, and neither one of them could hardly raise an arm to swing a punch. And you were wondering which team was going to make a mistake because that's what was going to end up causing a victory. It wasn't going to necessarily be somebody seizing the moment because the defenses were spent and neither team could do anything to stop the offenses.
Right.
And
Yeah, well, I was watching the highlights of that game because that was from week 6. And yeah, Oklahoma winning 53-45 in quadruple overtime, which is crazy. But
yes,
I think it was in the third overtime, Texas, was going to go up by 1. And then they had their extra point blocked. Or maybe it was just
it was a field goal, wasn't it?
You're right. It was a field goal attempt. It was a field goal attempt that got blocked, and then
Yep.
Oklahoma went for their own field goal attempt later, and that one was just missed completely, even though it was not that far.
And the guy who missed it, Alex, was Oklahoma's field goal kicker, who was phenomenal. Who was like combined in field goals and extra points like 59 of 58, or maybe it was 59 of 59. Like he had not missed in almost a year and a half anything, an extra point or field goal. He was brilliant. He was an All-American. He was first team All-American last year. And then in the Red River Shootout, where all he has to do is kick a 30-yard field goal and they win, and he shanks it to the left. It was amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, but so that would have been devastating for that kid if Oklahoma had lost. But thankfully, they
that's true.
Still pulled it out.
The good news is that for Nebraska fans, the ideal scenario would be for both Oklahoma and Texas to lose. That would be like ultimate, right? And pretty much that's what happened. Both of those teams are 2-2. They both have 2 losses in conference, right? Their losses are because they're just playing conference games. They played 1 non-conference game is all. So they're both 2-2 at this point, and they have 2 conference losses each. And so you have some teams like Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU that are undefeated in their conference play, and so there's some teams that have a chance. Because Oklahoma has won that conference pretty much every year for like since Nebraska left.
Yeah,
I was going to say the last decade it's been pretty much all OU, and so it would be neat to see TCU or Iowa State or Kansas State to actually sustain, their early success here all the way to the end of the season. And since TCU has already played Texas, and Kansas State has already, their victory is against Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma, right? Yeah, Oklahoma. So, I mean, they have one of the big boys already out of the way. Mm-hmm. Iowa State also is a team that has a very salty defense, and a solid offense with a senior quarterback who knows what the hell he's doing. So Iowa State's going to be a tough out for teams too.
Yep.
So that whole conference is upside down. It's awesome.
Yep. Right. Well, because in the previous week, week 5, that's where Iowa State played against Oklahoma, and Iowa State ended up winning 37-30.
Yeah.
Which is another
See,
big shocker.
again, all these high scoring games, but all within 7 points of each other. So it's back to that, basketball on grass, who gets the ball last kind of thing.
Yeah. One, since you were mentioning the field goal kicking in the Texas-Oklahoma game, I thought it was worth mentioning that in the Kansas State game, the thing that let them go up by 3 to win 38-35 over Oklahoma was like a 50-yard field goal by their kicker that had some real juice on it. So they've got a good kicker too.
They do, absolutely. And so and Ellinger, the quarterback from Texas, just played an absolutely spectacular football game. I mean, he did it all and was trying so hard, and his effort was admirable and an impressive thing to watch. So, but ends up in a loss for them.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, both those teams will rebound. They'll end up being very good by the end of the year, and if push comes to shove, one of those other 3 teams I mentioned has to be able to beat those other teams so that they can stay, undefeated or have only one loss is what they got to do. They got to take advantage of this opportunity and seize the moment. And we'll see if that plays out for the Big 12, because that's the only way, frankly, that one of those teams might build the case for being in the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're looking at a year where the Pac-12 is not even going to be a part of the playoff because they're not starting early enough. The Big Ten is going to barely get it in, assuming that they don't have a bunch of COVID cancellations. And then the SEC is sitting fat with almost a guarantee of 2 teams, unless the Big 12 has a team really, truly emerge like, TCU. Because Kansas State and Iowa State, although they've both got big wins, also are the 2 teams from the Big 12 that lost in week 1 to teams they never should have lost to.
Right.
Iowa State lost to Louisiana, Monroe, I think, or something like that. So anyway, crazy set of circumstances. Yeah.
Talking about just some of the bigger games between the highly ranked teams. In week 5, Georgia played against Auburn, number 4 Georgia versus number 7 Auburn, and Georgia controlled that game pretty well, 27-6 over Auburn. And then in week 6, number 1 Clemson played against number 7 Miami and dominated 42-17.
Right. And even that score is not reflective of how much they dominated. I mean, they did end up giving up some yards late. Clemson did, but I mean, for almost 3 quarters, I think Miami's offense, which had been doing very well, and their quarterback, D'Eriq King, had some early Heisman hype because of his performance early. I think they had 108 yards of total offense or something. It was crazy.
Wow.
So that was a very dominant performance by Clemson on frankly a game in which their All-American quarterback and likely Heisman frontrunner at Clemson didn't have his best game ever.
Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence.
But Trevor Lawrence, yeah, he didn't have his best game ever, but he played well, and then the running backs and the defense played spectacular for Clemson. So and that was probably expected to be one of their toughest games of their conference season.
Mm-hmm. Because the ACC is so weak in comparison to how good Clemson is.
Right, and people thought maybe it was that because there's a lot of talent there in that Miami roster, and they thought maybe this would be the team that could do it, but nope, it wasn't to be. So I think Clemson is in the driver's seat for sure, and then you got Alabama and Georgia and 2 or 3 other SEC teams that are all going to be vying for spots, and then you got the craziness that's going on in the Big 12, and who knows what's going to happen, but likely, Ohio State is going to be the victors of the Big Ten, so they get in. So it's going to be two SEC teams, Ohio State and Clemson. Does that sound familiar?
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, I think you could give the playoff committee a little bit of a break this time, since one of the conferences is even playing. So,
Oh, I know. No, you're right.
it's a
You're
weird
you're absolutely right.
situation.
I would I would love it if it was Iowa State, for example.
That would be
that
cool.
they would go undefeated or something, but
From
they
this
they
point
already
on.
screwed up. They didn't.
Right.
So now it's got to be TCU,
Yeah.
and I really don't want them to.
Fair enough. Last games to talk about here in week 6. Florida played against Texas A&M and got upset in another high scoring close game. Same verse, same as the first. Texas A&M scored 41 points to Florida's 38. And then we had a close game, surprisingly close game between Auburn and Arkansas, where Auburn won, but it was 30-28.
Right. And in that game, there was a very, very controversial call late in the game where the Auburn quarterback fumbled or muffled the snap from center, okay? And then was going to, his intention was to spike the ball to stop the clock, okay? For the, I mean, that's what you do, right? And
Right.
and there are special rules that govern that whole process of spiking the ball to stop the clock. Okay, and but when you muffle the snap, that's it. Those some of those things are no longer in play. Like usually if you just throw the ball down like that, that's intentional grounding, and it's a penalty, right? So it's a very specific set of circumstances where you can do that legally. Well, when he bobbled the snap, he also shifted his body, turned his body. So when he threw the ball down, he was throwing it backwards, right? What does that mean? That means that's not a forward pass. That's a lateral. That's a free ball. That's a fumble.
Right.
And then the referees blew the whistle before any team, either the offensive team, Auburn in this case, or Arkansas, had a chance to get possession and control the football. The play was whistled dead with the ball still on the ground, and that was a fumble. That was a live football and should have been deemed that way. But they ended up calling it an incomplete pass, and obviously allowed Auburn to have another play, which they used to kick a field goal and win it. Yeah. I think that's just another example of a refereeing crew just completely blowing a call in that critical moment.
Yeah. Well, and I also was reading a little bit about how in that Texas-Oklahoma game, apparently there was like a time clock error near the end that like gave Texas like 40 seconds back or something like that. Which,
it had to do with when they stopped the clock, and they treated it as a circumstance that should have been a stopped clock, right? Because there's the 35-second game clock, right?
Right.
It's always going. Classic. Another example of Texas getting benefits, right?
Yes.
I mean, how often does that have to happen before you can no longer say that's just randomness and luck of the draw? That every time there are issues where a team needs a clock interpretation that is beneficial to them for them to get another playoff, it's Texas. They always get it, and they never are on the other side of that. And so that statistically becomes more and more of an anomaly every time it happens. And so anybody who wants to question whether Texas has some people working on their behalf to ensure that they get a little extra security every time is blind. So just another example.
Yes. Well, us Nebraska fans will never forget the 1 second in the Big 12 championship game.
put back on the clock. Not that they stopped it early or anything like that. No, they actually put it back on the clock just so that Texas could have that final play when they never should have had it. And everyone agreed that was true. except of course Texas fans.
Of course. All right, and
Anyway,
then last thing, you were correct. I looked it up. In this upcoming weekend, LSU does play against Florida,
yes,
and the big game is Georgia versus Alabama, who are currently number 2 and number 3 according to the
yes,
polls.
yes, and frankly, that is, in my opinion, that's the SEC championship right there, right? I mean, that's the game that's going to be the two best teams probably in that league. And both of them will probably end up getting into the playoff. And I don't know, are they in opposite divisions? I think they
Um,
are. Georgia and Alabama, I think they are in opposite divisions. So they may very well face each other again for the conference championship game. And then they would potentially still be in the running. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. That's good that they're playing this weekend, though. That's really good. I'm assuming that's the night game. Did you happen to notice?
yeah, it says 5 o'clock PST Pacific time.
Pacific.
So
Okay. Awesome. That'll be a great game to watch, boy. I'll be in front of the TV for that one.
yeah, that should be good. It's at home for Alabama.
Yep.
So what's your thinking on score? We should do our usual score predictions.
Wow. Well, it's a home game for Alabama, so I'm going to give it to Alabama, but it will be close. And Alabama's defense showed some weakness, obviously, in that Ole Miss game last week. Um, so I'm going to say it's going to be high scoring, but Alabama's still going to win it. So it's going to be one of these, let's say 35-31, Alabama wins.
35-31. Okay. Very good. I'm also going to predict an Alabama victory, but I'm going to say it's going to be a little bit more high score, or the margin of victory is going to be a little bit wider. So
Okay.
I'm going to say, let's say 38 Alabama, 24 Georgia.
Okay. Just for the record, though, I will say, since we just covered that, I want Georgia to win, and I will be rooting for Georgia hard. just so you understand where my hope is. I would love it if it was the other way around, and that Georgia, because frankly, Georgia has pissed down their legs at least twice in games that they should have beaten Alabama, where they were the better team, and they found a way to lose it. And so it would be a great little step in the right direction for them to finally win a game, even if they're not deserving to win it. Meaning that Alabama is clearly the better team, but maybe makes one or two mistakes too many, and then Georgia's able to take advantage. But I doubt it. I think Nick will have Alabama ready to play a great football game and will probably win.
Yep. And then LSU Florida, it's also a home game for Florida. And earlier in the season, I probably would have told you that I would think LSU would have that one, being defending national champs and all. But Florida did just get upset by Texas A&M in a close game. But I think, especially since it's at home for Florida, I think I've got to give it to them over LSU, and gonna predict a high-scoring game. Close victory, but high-scoring, just like all those upsets that we were looking at before. So let's say Florida wins it. Let's say 49, and LSU gets 38.
49-38. Okay. Well, I'm going to say it'll end up being just slightly lower scoring, where Florida's not going to score 49 points. Let's say they're only going to score 45, but that LSU is going to struggle a little bit more offensively. So I'm going to say 45-24, Florida victory.
Okay.
I think the struggles continue for LSU.
Yep. I think that's a fair prediction. And the last thing we have on our docket for today is, of course, talking about our favorite Nebraska Cornhuskers, who have gotten into practice this week. And I believe you have the scoop on what the coaches have been saying and everything like that.
Well, it's kind of interesting, Alex. They're not talking nearly as much as they would historically, right? And they're doing their conferences instead of having a football press conference. They're doing the Zoom thing a little bit, and so it's a little bit different where the media are asking a few questions, and it's very different. So we're not getting nearly as much information, and also I would say very specifically, that Scott Frost and his coaches have all made the decision to play down the hype. They're consciously not talking about underclassmen. They're talking about their seniors, their leaders. They're talking about the guys that we already know about, that played a significant role last year. But they're not doing what they've done in the previous 2 years, where they have kind of allowed the hype train to start building for some of their young players. If you're a player that hasn't seen a lot of snaps, or you're a freshman, then it doesn't matter whether you're doing really well in camp and really showing well. They're not making that comment this year. So it's kind of an interesting, much more subdued, much more Tom Osborne-esque approach to the communication during the preseason. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think also hidden in Scott's comments are the reality that he's hopeful that his depth is better this year than it has been in other years, and that will translate into guys performing better who are the starters as well, right? Because they're being pushed by that improved depth. Uh, but I can also hear in his choice of words and even the tone of his comments that I think he is fully aware that Nebraska continues to be a team that's fragile from a depth standpoint. And he keeps talking about how he's building it. We're building it, we're building it, we're building it. But he never says we're there.
Mm-hmm.
We're better than we were last year, but there's always that hesitation that you're waiting for the but to come into the conversation. So I would say that right now, um, Scott is doing everything he can to downplay expectations for Nebraska football going into this season, and I believe that there's a number of reasons for that. I believe that we've had some losses on the team in terms of players that aren't available to us, either because of injury or because of a couple of them opting maybe not to play this season because of COVID, and then we have some kids who never even gave themselves a chance at Nebraska, and the whole COVID thing kind of disrupted their whole college experience enough that they just didn't feel comfortable anymore and went home. So we've had some losses that way in terms of, and that affects our depth,
Right.
is what I'm talking about. Not so much starters, but depth. And I think that then you add on top of that the schedule that we know is daunting this year, especially right out of the blocks where we play first week at Ohio State, is something where Scott's just kind of downplaying everything. I believe he is quietly confident that we are better than we were last year, that we have a much more mature offensive line who is going to be better. But how much better? I don't even think Scott knows, right? He's not quite sure. And frankly, it has to be a lot better, right? Because
Right.
because we need to protect our quarterback, and we need for that quarterback to be able to have some success. Also, what's been interesting is that they really haven't specifically rode the Adrian Martinez train. They have released information suggesting that, not that it's a full-blown open competition, but it's clear that Luke McCaffrey, is doing well and is getting a fair number of first-team snaps.
Mm-hmm.
So they are going into the season preparing for the fact that at least in these early games, I think you can expect that Luke McCaffrey is going to see snaps at quarterback. He's also probably going to see a package that I think includes him in a wide receiver role that could translate to uh, some quarterback shenanigans going on with both of them on the field at the same time. But I think they're planning on using Luke
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. They're going to find a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that due to what I was just talking about previously in terms of the national games, because all teams, regardless of their prestige or whatever, haven't had time to get their players properly ready, and go through as much practice as they'd like, which has led to some of these, kind of crazy upsets and high scores and stuff. That does give me some hope, that we may have more of a shot against an Ohio State, defense that hasn't practiced as much, and we may be able to, get some nice touchdowns on him. But then in reverse, our defense, which already has plenty of issues, being even less practiced will mean I think we'll get scored on plenty by Ohio State in return. So it's going to
Right.
be, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think
It will.
throwing in some new wrinkles on the offensive side with a McCaffrey, in different positions, or I'm blanking on his name right now, but our star,
Wandale Robinson.
right, Wandale, being healthy again and being able to be the
Yeah.
multi-purpose tool that he is, could create some excitement, I think.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think we have the potential or the chance to be quite successful offensively, and maybe even against Ohio State. Where, like you say, you catch them first game. They've got some new starters too, and we have a little success. And again, the whole concept of Scott's offense is about getting into rhythm, right, and getting that high-paced offense going. And if he could do that with some success and some consistency with a quarterback who is in his third year now as the starter with Scott's system, all of a sudden maybe that whole thing slows down. A lot of what I feel like Adrian's problem was not only was he injured and he was dealing with a center who was just learning the position, and so he didn't have confidence in his snaps, but he was also trying to do too much. He was trying to do too much himself rather than letting the offense do the work for him. And so I think him going through his progressions and his checkdowns, I'm hopeful that we're going to see Adrian be way better at going through progressions this year than he was last year, because that's really what he needs to improve at.
Yeah, one bit of disappointment that does stink from the perspective of us having such a front-loaded, tough schedule is that, you'd like to be able to have, a first opponent that's, weaker than us, to give Adrian the chance to, show his improvement and kind of build his confidence. Because I think that's the big thing from last year compared to his first year. He impressed us all in a lot of ways. Then second year, it was like he took a step back,
Right.
which was surprising to a lot of people. So if he has made these improvements in the off season and matured more, then I hope to see that here in this third year. But if, we lose, right out of the gate in our first couple games, because we're playing these tough teams and he never gets that chance to build that confidence, then he may be, I hope that doesn't like damage him then for the rest of the season when we play against our, weaker teams.
And then he's been kind of injury prone, right? I mean, he's been a guy that gets banged up. He's had a couple of knee issues already in his career and stuff. And so the idea of having to play against a very physical, very talented, if not experienced, Ohio State defense is still got the earmarkings of a game that will cause Adrian to be pretty banged up for week 2. Mm-hmm. And so my hope would be, as we prepare, we're now within 2 weeks of game day. So this week is super critical for the coaches putting final decisions together on what the depth chart's going to look like for the early games. And so, the players that are in that discussion still, they have to make their move. If there are 3 guys that are at running back, for example, we expect Dietrich Mills is going to be the starter, but there's 3 players behind Dietrich that are going to be very important to us, because Dietrich's not going to make it through. Hell, he probably won't even make it through the Ohio State game, much less the season, without getting dinged up to the point where he needs a breather or some time off the field, right? So you got to have a second, third, and a fourth running backs all ready to go. Well, we aren't even close to that, right? I'm hoping we can have 2, maybe 3, but the idea of being 4 deep, that's still a pipe dream for us. So right. Who is number 2? Who is number 3? Who is number 4? Those are the decisions that have to be made this week, and then they'll really tighten down the reps next week on game week, and most of the reps are going to go to 1s and 2s. Mm-hmm. And the 3s and 4s get very few reps, right? Then everything starts to focus in on just those top 44 or 50 players.
Right.
So
And the last thing I was going to say was that I think also some of probably Scott's more kind of reserved discussions when it comes to talking about the practices and the players and everything is because, that they, like you said, they did kind of let the hype, kind of build for some of our younger talent last year and things like that. And then, we ended up having another disappointing season.
Right.
And now Scott's had 2 in a row. So I think he is very, conscious of that and trying to be more realistic with fans on like, we're still in this rebuilding process.
Right.
And we've got this tough schedule, so don't get your hopes up too high.
Right. Exactly. And I think he needs to be managing his team's expectation with the players. I mean, they've got so many things they're having to message to these players. These guys are being asked to not be students, basically, not be the typical college student athlete that they've been in the past, and instead be this very mature, focused athlete student who is, focused on his sport, dedicating himself to his academics and staying out of trouble and just going home after practice every day and just do your work and shut up. Okay. And don't go out, don't party, don't do any of the fun stuff that has been a part of maybe their last 2 or 3 years. And that's a hard ask. And the longer you get into the semester, the tougher that's going to get. And especially if you start losing, right? Then all of a sudden the commitment level begins to wane and drop off. And now the leaders don't have the ear of the younger guys quite as well. And the wheels could come off really quick for a team. And especially when you're as fragile mentally as Nebraska is, some early success. And I think early success for Nebraska will be being competitive with Ohio State. I mean, actually scoring some points against them and making them punt regularly would be a good thing, because we haven't even been able to make Ohio State's offense punt the last couple of years. So we need to be able to have a 3 and out every now and then and show that we're capable of at least hanging with them for periods of time, even though over the course of a game, maybe they end up climbing and having a 21-point victory or something. That would be, in my opinion, a step in the right direction and would maybe allow the coaches to message the team with the positives enough to prepare them for the next week against a Wisconsin team that, frankly, I think we do have a chance to beat. I could see us winning that game if we don't lay a complete egg against Ohio State.
Yep. Well, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. There's a lot to look forward to in this week and the upcoming weeks. I think probably our next podcast will probably be before the Ohio State game, kind of
right, game week.
Right, game week. We'll do a podcast with our kind of updated thoughts on how the practices have been going. The other big games that have happened since that time in the in-between period, and getting us all excited for Nebraska football again.
Exactly. I think, and I'm gonna be here in Lincoln for probably the first 2 games for this game, Ohio State, which obviously is being played at Ohio State in Columbus, and then the Wisconsin game, which will be played here, but no one will be in attendance, right, except for maybe some family. But I'm going to be in the Lincoln area and kind of see what transpires. It'll be interesting to experience that part of this COVID year.
That's right. So if you all out there enjoyed listening to this podcast, you can find us online if you search for us on iTunes under College Football Throwdown, or Apple Podcasts as well. You can find us online at footballthrowdown.podomatic.com. You can leave us a review and let us know what you think of the podcast. We always love hearing from the fans. And you can reach out to us at huskerpete13@gmail.com to send in any specific questions, and we'll read them out live on the air. So thank you very much out there for listening, and thank you for joining me, Dad, for this podcast. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.